Hi, and welcome to this episode of the State of Leadership Simple and Beyond. That is Robert Hilliard. I am Whitney Wiley, and we are here on Thursdays, 3 p.m. Eastern, 12 noon Pacific, talking all things leadership. And today we have what I hope will be a fun show. Well, I think all our shows are fun, but I think particularly fun because we're going to be talking a little sports with our leadership today. And we're going to talk leadership in the context of the Colorado football team and what's been going on there with Coach Prime Deion Sanders. And I think we're going to talk a little bit about Robert's football team, maybe
My basketball team, probably.
basketball team.
Yeah.
And we're going to do a little Elon bashing. Well, I am. I don't know about Robert. I don't know about Robert, but I don't know if it's bashing. Actually, I'm probably going to be much um, fairer here than maybe I am in other aspects of my life. So I have some caveats that I want to start with, and then I'll give Robert an opportunity to sort of share his opening thoughts. And my caveats around this is that I don't know Deion Sanders. I don't know Elon Musk. I don't know any of the players on the Colorado football team, his coaches, staff, any of that, or anyone that was connected with him from Jackson State. So my opinions are going to be from what I have observed as he has unfolded his tenure the last 2 years at Colorado, what I see, what I've watched. But if someone knows something about him in personal context, I'm not vouching for him in that respect because I don't know him like that, right? And so a lot of what we talk about here is perception because it's from the outside. When we talk about there are other things that we talk about from experience, right? The things that we've actually gone through and our perspective, our knowledge, etc., from personal knowledge. This is not one of those, and I just wanted to make that clear.
No.
So, any opening thoughts? And I will probably say something to that effect multiple times before we wrap up. But I wanted to put that out there. Opening thoughts, Robert.
Opening thoughts. I know I said I'd be talking about my basketball team, but what I'm going to share is you can use with any sport. So, and I do follow football, but not this season because the Giants. But I am a tried and true Nick fan, and we'll talk about that a little bit.
Awesome. And I chose football because we've talked a number of times about the Warriors, some leadership lessons, team lessons out of the Warriors. I thought we'd go in a slightly different direction. And I want to say this. This is I think you and I are in alignment. Actually, I know we're in alignment on this, the importance of vision of the leader, right? Having a vision and then making sure that all members of the team are in alignment with that vision, right? That's what helps to gel a group of people into a team. It's having a vision, shared goal, a place that you are all moving together. And without that, it often leads to chaos. And what I know about the past 2 years with Coach Prime and the Colorado football team is that the year before he came, the team had been 1-11. Their record was 1-11. They were a part of the Pac-12 at the time.
Which is no more, right? That they dissolved the Pac-12, correct?
They are not part of the Pac-12, right? They are now in the Big 12.
Okay.
which actually has 16 teams, but that's another story for another time. I guess it's in transition, and it will eventually get to 12 over the course of some period of time. But right now, last count, I was like, why are there 16 teams here? But there's a story behind that, not the point of today's episode. So
And
they had,
one other thing though, why are you calling
yeah,
him Coach Prime? Coach Prime, like he's a transformer.
he's he's got he's got, so you can correct me if I'm wrong, but Coach Prime, Deion Sanders, played football in the NFL. He was a cornerback, and he was very, very good
Yeah.
at his position. And at the time, he was called Prime Time,
Prime time.
and
Okay, got it.
that was his nickname, was Prime
He was,
Time.
yeah, it was
And
prime time.
I think somewhere along the line, he dropped the time. He's just Prime.
Oh,
Right.
got it. Okay. I keep
He's
thinking he's gonna transform into something. So
Well, he has transformed into something, so that's a good point. He has transformed into something, and he is transforming his team into something, which I think is really interesting. And the point of leadership ultimately, right, is to help those that you are leading transform into, whether it's better football players and a better football team, or some of what he says that he feels like his calling is, which is to help these young men, these kids, really, right? I was talking with my husband the other day, and it was the last game of their season was senior day, and I just watched these kids walk, these seniors, right? They're walking the line for the last time. It's their last home game, and and as much as we watched them be football players and brutal and strong, they all of them started walking with their head down, right? A sign of humility, a sign of unsuredness often. And I was just looking at them and their body language. It's like they're kids. They are kids. And Coach Prime feels like part of his calling is to help them transform from kids to young men, young adults, right? To become men, and to give them opportunities for the NFL if that's their dream. But bigger picture is to help them to be prepared for life, right? And whatever happens with them, whether they play in the NFL at all, or if they play for a short time or have a long career. I think the average football player, NFL player's career is like 3 years, right? So they don't have nearly as long a tenure in that sport as basketball players or baseball players, or maybe some others, tennis, etc. So that's where he starts. I is one of the reasons that I was sort of drawn to this as a topic, is that he's not just coaching a bunch of kids to play football. He is preparing them, helping them transform for life. And that is ultimately the purpose of leaders, right? Is to help the people on your team to elevate, to level up, to be the best they can be, so that they can contribute to this endeavor and whatever future endeavors to the best of their ability.
I agree. I think it's easy to forget that these very large individuals are not, they're adults, but they're still kids in a way, because they're not fully matured. It takes a couple years. They know, they have research that says your brain is not fully formed until you're 23 years old. So to teach them these things, to help them learn to be adults and to be contributors into society. The other thing, this is very interesting, because I learned many lessons from playing organized sports as a teenager. I
Yeah.
didn't appreciate it because at the time I was like, I'm gonna be a professional this or whatever. Of course, that's not gonna happen because it's 1%, if that, of the people that do that. But those were lessons that I didn't really appreciate until later
Yeah.
on in life. And it was really interesting. I noticed this. I came upon this revelation or realization when I was in a band, and we had a three-piece band, and two of us had played organized sports in high school, and the third person didn't. And it was very interesting how we were able to, the two of us that did, were able to collaborate, and the other person was more of a, I want this because of me.
Mm.
And so I was like, wow. And then I said to the person, were you on any teams? And I said, no, I was because it showed. It showed. And so it's really important. There's a lot of lessons sometimes because we put so much emphasis on winning
Yes.
and competition that we forget that there are other things that we learn or that can be learned in organized sports. So I think that's really important.
That is such a good point, and I think it is. You've got the various components. You've got competition and winning, and there's nothing wrong with winning. The question sometimes that needs to be asked is winning at what cost, right? The winning at the cost of values, right? Right now we have something happen brewing in the news, and I'm not gonna like dive deep into this because it's still a situation that's unfolding. But before we got started, we were talking about the murder of the CEO of United Health, and you know, there I've seen a couple of takes on what happened, and we've talked about this, right? Social media can be brutal, and the comments that have been made
Yeah.
about his murder, and a lot of not much sympathy, right? Or
Yeah.
empathy for the employees of the company or the family, etc. And I don't want to get too deep into that, but you know, there's this sentiment of that's profit at any cost, and it's at the cost of other people. And so when we talk about leadership, we are often talking about it almost exclusively, at least where we come from, is that ethics is an important part of leadership, right? That if you're going to be an exceptional leader, it is that ethics is a part of that. And so, uh, it, but it starts with vision. It starts with what is your vision? What is the vision for yourself as a leader? What is the vision for your team and the people that you are leading? What are you helping them to coalesce around so that you go from being a group of people to an entity with a single mission? And if that mission is winning, as it is in the case of football overall, right? Overarching is that the football teams at professional level, college, are not in existence to not win, right? It's a business, and so it is about winning. And so a couple of things that have sort of jumped out at me as a starting place for the vision, and one is the place where this started, at least at Colorado. I'm not overly familiar with what happened at Jackson State, how Coach Prime got started there and how he transformed that team, but he did the same thing. He went into a program that needed his expertise and his abilities, and he turned that program around. He transformed that program. As I mentioned, this Colorado program the year before had been 1-11, and it had been some time since they'd had a winning season. I think they'd only had a couple of winning seasons in the whole of the 2000s. So he went there in 2023. He was 23, 24, 20. Where are we? 24.
He
So
came in.
23 last year, right? And so when he started there, he there was a lot of fanfare, and there was a lot of controversy actually about him going to Colorado because he'd been at an HBCU, a historically black college. Jackson State's a historically black college, and he said his purpose and calling was to help these young men. And then when he left there, there was all kinds of controversy surrounding that. Not the point of today, but there was some controversy surrounding that. So he comes to Colorado, and in the era of social media, he brings entourage cameras and everything, and they film the very first interaction that he has with what was the holdover of the 1-11 team. And the sound bites were, I'm coming, we're coming. I came, I brought my luggage. It's Louis, and he invited the players that had been the holdover from the prior year to enter the transfer portal. So if you're not familiar in college sports period, I guess that we've gone from a day and age where if you left one school to go to another, you had to sit out a year and red shirt.
Right.
Don't need to get into all that, but now they have this thing it's called a transfer portal. If you want to change schools, you can do that. You state your intent to do that. You go into the transfer portal. Other schools have the opportunity to pick you up, and you don't necessarily lose your eligibility to play by going to a different school. So he invited these players to go into the transfer portal. And I didn't find anything wrong with the approach, but a lot of people did. And I would say I would actually, and this is the only reason that I'm bringing up Elon Musk, actually, is when he took over Twitter, he had a similar but very different approach, right? So the thing is, you want to take, and this is where I'm giving Elon Musk the benefit of the doubt. I have some other thoughts about what's really going on, but for illustrating this point, that Elon Musk's approach was to fire, all right, a significant portion of Twitter staff. Deion Sanders went in and said, "This is what you were. This is who we're going to be starting right now. If this doesn't work for you, there's the door. There's the transfer portal, right? You can avail yourself of that, because from here on out, we have a new standard. There's a new vision. We have a new goal. And I need you to buy into that. And if you're not going to buy into that, then there's no place for you here." Right. And Elon Musk took a slightly different approach, and he went in and said, "You guys are out of here." And whether or not that has worked for him, I think in some respects it has, because I think his goal is very different from the goal that Coach Prime had, which was to build up a team in a way that was all bought in, and not necessarily people who were afraid or concerned that they couldn't get a job elsewhere, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, a couple of things. So I'm familiar with how Deion came into Colorado, but I reserve my opinions. But I will say this: Deion Sanders is used to winning.
Yeah,
he's getting paid a lot of money to go over there and transform that. So Could be. I don't know this, but there probably were a couple of people who are on that team who know that Colorado hadn't had a winning season in a long time, and they were probably just okay to play NCAA football.
Yes.
He did not want that. And as a leader, that's his right to say, look, I want to win. There are people on this team that want to win. They brought me here to transform this team so that this team would become a winning program. I totally get that. That's one thing. And so I think that I don't necessarily find anything wrong with that. That's the reason why he was brought in there. The other thing is he is a big name, for lack of a better word, star, who is a successful coach going in there. That already is going to bring a lot of attention and
Right.
a lot of recruits. So that's probably the other reason why they gave him the job. He's going to attract talent to that program. So obviously they want to win. And so him telling people, hey, look, if this isn't for you, certainly you can enter the transfer portal and go someplace else. I don't see a problem with that. The other thing that I want to mention is that we're talking about true textbook leadership, because you can get results from, and people may think such and such is a leader. They scream and yell at their people and they demand. That's not leadership from the textbook standpoint. That's coercion. And you can get response. And we're going to talk about this on another show, right? You can get responses from them. You may even get success for your company that way. But that is not true leadership. We're talking about the true textbook definition of leadership. So just want to put that out there, because there are some people that I know, they're in the business world. I won't say what industry they're in, but banking, excuse me, who who do take this attitude, like, results at any cost, and that's not necessarily leadership.
I agree.
When you have your foot on someone's neck and you're grinding them down to the nub, that's not what we're talking about. So I just want to put that out there.
No, I absolutely agree. And that was, part of the reason mentioning that when we're talking about leadership, we are talking about with ethics, right? That there's an ethical component that is a part of that, so that it is not about grinding people down. It's not about wearing people out. It's not about abusing people. It's not about coercion and fear tactics, right? Instead, it's consequences. So here's you put in the work, there are consequences. So whether you put in the work or not is up to you. If you don't put in the work, the consequences that come along with that is the likelihood that you will not be around. That's the consequence of not doing your part when you are a part of a team. And if you do the work, that the consequences that come along with that tend to be. And as you mentioned, he is a leader, is a winner historically, right? From football days, baseball days, etc. As a coach, as a player, successful and used to winning. And the way he has done that is to set high bars, right? Late clearly, and we've talked about this on other shows. So, we'll invoke other shows that we've talked about this, communicating and clearly laying out expectations. And that's one of the things that I find really fascinating in this, is that from that very first meeting, just the laying out of the expectations. This is what this program has been. This is what this program will be starting today. And these are the things that are going to be necessary to turn that around. And so I just want to share this, that I don't know if he calls this a mantra or a motto or what, but it's part of his philosophy. It's on the walls at the university, in some of the facilities that they have. But he says this over and over again, right? He teaches his players, and this is about not just football. This is about life, to be smart, tough, fast, disciplined, and have character, with character. right, with character. And so, again, this goes to back to the caveat or the disclaimer at the beginning. I'm going by what I'm seeing and hearing. I don't know. Right? I don't know every aspect or facet of his life. And so if someone wants to come along and say, he doesn't have character, he's this, that, and the other thing, I can't speak to that. And I actually know for a fact that there are people, I use the quotations, haters, called haters of his, that have accused him of any number of things.
Mhm.
Yeah, journalists for whom I'm, reticent to give any airtime, um, because there seems to be something personal there rather than the focus on the results that he's getting in the programs that he runs. Right? We are not hearing about his athletes, his student athletes, having problems in class. Right? He's very big on them graduating, right? Going to class and graduating. And so they're not in trouble, right? They're not being arrested for drinking and driving and drugs and other kinds of things that you sometimes hear about. Does that mean that none of them are doing anything? I can't say, right? But for the most part, character is a part of what he's trying to teach, what he's mentoring, and that it goes again to the expectations that are laid out. And you can't lead effectively without having the vision, communicating expectations, making sure everyone's on the same page, and moving towards the same goal. And that, again, motto, mantra, whatever it is, smart, tough, fast, discipline with character, right, is one of those things that lays the foundation, and it sets a minimum bar for what he expects from the players.
I think it's really important that, how should I want to say this? Whenever somebody like Deion Sanders is in a prominent position like that, he was a very popular athlete, very showy. That's why they called him prime time. It's going to draw some negative publicity or comments. Now, I'm not a Deion Sanders fan per se, but I appreciate what he has done with that team and that program. So I tend to take those things with a grain of salt. When people say negative things about them, or the positive things too, because we're not there, right? So how
Right.
I am. I'm very like, well, I don't know. I wasn't there. I didn't see. All I can see are the results of what that person is doing.
Right.
That's what I go on. But I want to say something else, because you've been, and I just think it's so funny. We've been friends for so long, and we've had the show for a while, and we don't script these programs out. We just talk about the topic, and it's like, you come up with your talking points, I come up with my talking points. But we've been doing this so long that your talking points have become my talking points, because I wrote down 5 things that I see in successful coaches in the NBA and in the NFL and college sports as well. Create a vision, share it with your team, socialize it, adjust it. Really, what that means is getting input from the team, so they have buy-in. And that's the other reason why I brought up that whole coercion thing, because that doesn't work, especially in the NBA when you have grown adults. So it has to be some buy-in there. And then, you work that plan. That 4th thing is working that plan. And then the 5th thing is learn from your successes and mistakes. You have to be able to do that. And then it's, you recycle that. Perhaps your vision needs to change a little bit because there was a trade at the end of the season, or you're bringing in somebody else who was part of a different system with different strengths and weaknesses or abilities. You may have to shift your vision a bit and start that cycle all over again. So I think it's very interesting that you've mentioned 3 of my 5 things already.
Because good, effective leadership is good, effective leadership,
Yeah.
right? And I think that's sort of the core of this, and the wrapping is really sort of irrelevant, right? The wrapping gives each thing that we talk about week to week, it gives a different flavor,
Yeah.
but the essence is basically the same. And so, um, again, what I see is that there is this desire, and I would term it, and I've mentioned ethical leadership, right? We've talked about effective communication and visionary and transformational leadership. I think ultimately the way I would characterize him, from what I see, is as a servant leader, right? Someone who is focused on taking care of not just the members of the team, the players of the team, but the entirety of the team, the staff, the other coaches, the assistants. I've watched some documentaries about how they've transformed the nutrition program for the school, right? And the players, and how they feed them, and what it takes to make sure that they are fed with healthy, nutritious food. And I've talked to, athletes who have played on the college level, and that's not always the case. Sometimes those kids go hungry, and they don't have everything, which I think feeds into, not that I think, but feeds into a lot of what we talk about in terms of our simple framework, right? And leverage is it. As a servant leader, he is leveraging his celebrity, his connections, in order to make change that benefit not just the players, but the program. Hence, and then the programs improve, it improves the school itself, the morale of the students, who is attracted to and now applying to be a student at the universities, and outside of the university, the community, right? That everything that he's done to turn the school around is benefiting the community and the state of Colorado financially. Yes.
Systems, right? We always talk about systems. We're talking about, right, because I'm geeking out on what you're saying, because we tend to forget that all around a university there are those subsystems that benefit from student
Yes.
enrollment and people coming there, those people that go off campus to get something to eat and enjoy the town that's around there. So we're really talking about systems and how all of that benefits from what's going on at the University of Colorado.
Absolutely. I don't think this was necessary here at Colorado, but I know, at Jackson State, he actually gave up part of his salary, right, to pay other people on his staff. And he used his celebrity and leverage and some of his income to help improve the facilities at the university, right? So it's not just, I'm going to come in here and turn the football team around, but like you said, it impacts the broader system and the subsystems and the systems of which you are actually a subsystem.
Yeah.
And so to be someone who has that kind of vision, right? To think about it in the broader context of what it is you're doing, what your purpose is, and which is another component of simple leadership method is, right, what is your purpose?
Yeah.
Right? Your purpose is, yeah, it's to win football teams. Yes, it is to turn boys into men. Yes, right, but broader than that, right? And how big can you make your vision and your purpose so that more and more people are buying? All right, it's easy, or maybe it's easy to get the coaching staff to be in alignment with your vision. Maybe it's even, easy, relatively speaking, to get the team members to do, because they all want something out of playing at this school. But as it expands, right, more and more people are buying into that same vision, and that, at least in my mind, is a really true mark of a leader, a visionary leader, is to get, when people don't have to follow you, right? When they don't have to follow, when you have no authority
Right.
over them, and yet and still what you're doing impacts them, and they're voluntarily coming into and being a part of your vision, I think speaks volumes.
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
Um, so I shared the smart, tough, fast, discipline, and character. Talked about the servant leadership, right? Giving up your salary and being able to recruit. He's given opportunities to coaches that don't have any coaching experience, right? Looking at what is the actual need of this program. And sometimes when entities, all kinds of entities, and we've talked about this before, when you are looking to make hires, are you looking for someone to do the job, right? To be the person that left the job at the level that they were at? And often that's what happens, right? You want to hire someone who's got 10 years of experience coaching. Does this role really take that?
Right.
Or do they need something else? And what I'm seeing is that there are people on his coaching staff that have never coached before, right? We're talking now elite college level football team that has coaches that have no prior coaching experience, but they do have NFL experience,
Right.
right? They have played in the NFL. They played at the highest level. They understand what a what particular positions need in order to be skilled players, right? They understand the work ethic that it takes to get to the next level. And so bringing people in that do that, along with people who have experience, right, is another sign of being a servant leader. It's like, I don't have to only look to hire people who have XYZ. I can expand that and look for people who bring something else to the table that may be even more important than just having a number of years, because I can guarantee you the coach that coached before him had 4 years of experience at least, right? Now he those 4 years of losing experience, and probably have got a job somewhere else.
Yeah, it's very interesting. It always intrigues me to see where unsuccessful coaches land. And it's very interesting because a lot of those coaches that aren't successful in one level find success someplace else. And I think the good coaches can do that. They take those lessons and they learn. Mike Woodson is now, he was the Knicks coach. He was an assistant who ended up being the Knicks coach, and now he's coaching I think he coaches Indiana now in the NCAA. And I don't know how their team is doing this year because I follow St. Joe's, and they're not in our conference, so I don't care until they're in our conference. So we have to play them, but he's had a pretty good career there, and so it's always it's a fascinating thing to watch. These Rick Pitino, who ended up going to Iona and St. John's. You kind of watch this journey of these coaches that are go from one level to another, and you kind of watch and you see if they're coaching the same way, they're learning lessons, they shift their system at all. So it's very interesting to me. So I can't say I've made this a particular discipline study, But it's something that I'm going to start paying more attention to because there's enough of them around now, moving around, um, moving from NBA, moving from college to NBA. So it's very interesting, and it's something that I think that we can pay attention to and see because you are also a basketball fan. So it's an intriguing thing for me. Yeah.
No, it does happen a lot, and every situation is not necessarily a situation that works for every person,
Yeah.
right? And so sometimes it takes the right person to bring out the personalities, the talents. And so just because you weren't successful in place A doesn't mean that you won't be successful in place B. I think a key point that you made, it has to do with what lessons did you learn? How did you grow? How have you paid attention to yourself? Do you have any self-awareness? Right, another simple principle. Do you have any self-awareness about yourself and your growth and how you're leading, how you're coaching, and what's resonating, what doesn't? Are you stuck to doing it a particular way because that's the way you've done it, or are you open to making adjustments, right, that will ultimately connect with the people that you need to connect with? It's interesting. We'll see how this shakes out. But speaking of the NBA and basketball, right, a couple of years ago, up in Boston, I know they are not your favorite team. Up in up in Boston, right? Imi Adoka
Ooh.
was the coach up there. He'd taken the team and turned it around, gotten them to the finals against Golden State, if I remember correctly.
So yeah.
Um, and they lost. He had some troubles in the off season, ended up losing his job. Someone else came in, took over. Um, right, he is now with Houston. Houston had been a flailing team for the past few years. They are now, I think, second in the West. Um, and as
By
part
the
of
way, you
their,
do know he's a former Knick, right? You do know that, right?
well, okay, then that's the reason why. Let's give him that. We can give
That's
him
not the
that.
reason why, but I'm glad you said that.
I did not. I did not. But that's fine. Or it could be because he spent years under Pop, as an assistant coach under Pop.
Yep.
So some combination of all of that, right? All of the experiences. But he spent a year out of the league. He's back coaching, and he's taken a team that, just like he did in Boston, he's taken a team in Houston and has turned it around. They've bought into what he has to offer in the vision that he has for the team and how to get where they need to go. And when you watch them play, you can see the difference,
Yeah.
right? And so situations matter, growth matters, and it's important to ultimately, I think, pay attention to what it is you bring, how you bring it, what you learn, etc.
Yeah, well said. Um, the learning is so important, and I think if we get older, we sometimes forget that. And you and I are coaches, so that's something that is ingrained in us. It's ingrained in us. But a lot of people forget it's the learning. You haven't learned everything. There's still more to learn. And if you want to grow, if you want to be successful, you have to open yourself up to doing things differently and learning from your successes as well as your mistakes, because we make tons of mistakes. And I teach kids sometimes different things, martial arts, and when they make mistakes, they are always down on themselves. Like, oh, mistakes are wonderful. When you're
Yep.
training, that's the time to make the mistake because you're going to learn from that mistake. Mistakes can be transformative. A mistake can turn into something amazing. So
Yeah.
mistakes should not be avoided. It's the forum in which you make the mistake that creates the difference. And I tell them all the time, it's like, well, you do that in class, you make the mistake in class, you're going to learn from it. When you're defending yourself out in the street, you don't want to make the mistake. So you make all the mistakes you want here so you can learn, so we can build you up, so you can take those things. So as a leader, you're making mistakes along the way, and you should be reflecting on them and learning. So when you're in the big show, whatever that is, your first
Yes.
CEO gig, your first CFO gig, your first director gig, you have lessons that you're bringing in and you're building, and you're going to make more mistakes and you're going to learn from them. And those are going to propel you to your next level.
Absolutely. Right. And it reminds me of the concepts sort of, now's the time for practice, and you want to practice the way you want to show up.
Yep.
Right. It's not practice makes perfect. Right. But perfect practice to the degree that there is such a thing. Right. You want to practice the way you want to show up. And it's not just let me go through the motions. Right. Let me do this as if sort of thing.
Absolutely.
So just real quickly before we get, start to wrap up, you're talking about learning, the feedback comes with that. And I talked earlier about haters, and, there is something to be gained from having haters, or people who are critical, pointing out your flaws. Again, if you are willing to do some introspection, right, have some self-awareness around yourself and look and see how you can actually change and grow. But the other thing that brings, in addition to the lessons, is the ability to be resilient, right? That you can build that skill of resilience, and helping one to focus despite what detractors are saying, or what the outside world is saying. And it's not because you're ignoring it. You can hear it, take what is of value from that, and then bounce back, right? You don't have to get mired down in it, but it is a way to help you to actually step into your bigger power and purpose as a leader, right? To be bolder in your leadership, to be resilient, and it can help you get clearer, more clear, have more clarity about what it is you're doing and why it is you're doing it.
Yeah, there are always going to be detractors or haters, however you want to call them, or people that are critics or whatever, they want to critique you. And it's really important that we build up resilience so that we can not only absorb those things, but, like you're saying, learn from them, because although the way they say it may be not socially acceptable, or it could be harsh, there may be some truth in what they're saying. Even if it's 5%, it's worth taking a look at. It's not the easiest thing to do, but it's worth taking a look at.
Absolutely. Anything on your list you want to discuss that we haven't gotten to?
No, I think we've crushed it. We got them all in there. I think the only thing that we didn't talk about specifically is working the plan. And when I have working the plan in there, it's sticking to the plan that you and your team have devised together, knowing that it's not going to be perfect, knowing that you're not going to win every game. And that's why that last part is so important, to learn from your successes and failures, to think what went well that you want to do again, what didn't go so well that you need to adjust. But I also like to think of, and I work with my clients when we talk about this, like I call it the flat tire drill. Because you don't want to, if you're teaching somebody how to drive, you don't want to wait until they have a flat tire to teach them how to change the tire. So when we talk about successes, this went really well, we want to do this again, but what if it doesn't work? What's the contingency? You want to have your backup plan, so you're not just lobbing up 3-pointers all the time, and when you're cold, right? So what are you going to do if you go cold? You're going to keep shooting, or are you going to pass the ball? What other skills can you include or use that can still end up with 2 or 3 points? So you want to make sure that you're creating those contingency plans as you're working your plan as well.
Do you know how many times in a basketball game I'm shooting? You don't have to shoot a three. Um,
Man, don't get me started.
irrelevant to your point, but
No,
since you brought it up,
it's totally relevant. But and I'm going to say something that is, because I don't like to talk bad about people. We forget that these are athletes. These are these are athletes, right? And this is what they've been doing for a billion years. So if and people do, it makes them successful, right? And so they're like, I'm a 3-point shooter. I'm going to keep shooting threes. Even if I'm cold, they're eventually going to start going in. And it's called the shooter's mentality. We know that. But you need to have something else in the bag, in your bag of tricks, in case that's not, become a better passer.
But I think you said, if you're a 3-point shooter and you're cold, that's the whole point. They're not all 3-point shooters, right? So it is like, oh, that's working for him. Let me just do it, and it's like it's not working. So anyway, it's one of those things where I like find it's like, drive it to the basket. Why are you shooting a three? It's still 22 seconds left on the clock.
Exactly.
Shooting a three.
Or why are you dribbling? Pass the ball. Why are you? You're down 3 points. You're down. Why are you wasting? Why are you eating up your own clock? Well, we can talk about that forever.
So I brought up out of simple, and I just want to touch on a couple of other things. So I brought up leverage, purposefulness, self-awareness. Just wanted a couple of other things, that the other principles in simple that I didn't mention, sort of the intentionality aspect of leadership, and what I see in Prime is the deliberate decision making, right? Being very specific and strategic about the use of things like the transfer portal, or walking into a meeting, say, here's the message and here's what I am intentionally trying to communicate, and how important that is for your people. And we did a 2-part series on decision making, right?
Yes.
And one of the things about that is being deliberate and being willing to be intentional about what it is you're doing. Mastery, right? That all of this is, how are we setting standards and mastering the skills, the mindset that needs to go into what it is you're doing as a leader, right? Taking the time to study, to understand not only yourself, but what works, what doesn't work, understanding your people, so that you can, going back to leverage your knowledge, your experience in a way that is going to resonate with your people. And then finally, just, the energy, right? If you watch coaches in general, there's so much we can learn. And as you mentioned at the very beginning, so much we can learn from sports, so much we can learn, I think, from sports coaches, and how they are usually very physically demonstrative in their connection with their players, right? They're talking, they're not hiding behind desks, and not out in the field of play where their people are, right? So getting out and walking the floor with your staff, managing by walking around, right? Taking the time to be where your people are is something that I see that happens frequently in sports, and just capitalizing on that, the energy that comes from that becomes really important for you.
Yeah,
I'll give you
agreed.
the final word.
My final word is that was perfectly said.
You are too kind.
Thank you.
So, if someone wanted to connect with you, if someone wanted to connect with you and have you help them be a better coach, right?
They can, yeah, we're having a little bit of audio issue.
Be a better leader for their people, or a better how they go about doing that.
Yeah, they can reach out to me at inspireme@roberthilliardcoaching.com, or go to Robert Hilliard Coaching and fill out the contact form and let me know how you would like me to help you.
Go for it.
Yeah, I just did. We're having some audio issues.
Awesome. I think it's less audio than video. So
Yeah.
we'll wrap this up. You can reach out to, okay. And we can, if you need to reach out or want to reach out to me, you can reach out at shiftingintoaction.now.site, shiftingintoaction.now.site. We'll just wrap this up. Here, Thursdays, 3 p.m. Eastern, 12